Welcome to the channel. This is Reliable Rudy. Just give me a couple moments before we get this live stream going where I'm going to recap the trading day in the stock market. As you guys know, I'm not a licensed financial advisor. I'm simply just sharing my opinion here. Um, you know, in my opinion, I think in the short run, the stock market is a voting machine. I have a vote, the guy next to me has a vote, the guy next to him has a vote. In the long run, I think it's a weighing machine. So, yeah, with that being said, let me just post a couple things real quick and then we'll get this recap underway. Okay, that looks good. Volume looks good. Okay, so as of right now, I have the Nasdaq pulled up. This is exactly where I left off yesterday, talking about the Nasdaq. Nothing's changed. Let's go over to a 15-minute chart. Yesterday was a Fed meeting day. And this is pretty much how I left my chart set up. Now, if we go to in the futures, we can see the aftermarket trading and the pre-market trading, and I will do that briefly. But you can see this was the channel we had set up, and it's respecting the channel as of right now. We're still trading inside the channel, and I stated that until this gives me a break in one direction or the other, I'm not buying any types of moves in either direction. I'm not buying the top end of the channel. I'm not buying the bottom end of the channel. I'm not selling either side either. Until I get a clear view of which way this market could potentially go, I'm just kind of in a standstill. But that being said, if we do continue following this, are we going to follow it down to we have a gap fill right here, we have a gap fill right here, and we have another gap fill down here at some support, and we have a trend line. If I go over to my daily chart, you can see we have a trend line just connecting the lows. We got 2 points of contact. If you consider this 2 points of contact, okay, we have 3 points of contact, and we have these gap fills kind of meeting in at the tops over here. How is it going to act if we continue following this channel to the downside? uh, yeah, so let's go into the sticky notes posted for today. Oh, man. So I'll pull over. Here is the first one that we have posted. We posted 4 sticky notes. So we will start with one of the trades that I did take today. CTSH, I thought they were solid earnings. Uh, a lot of people have different views on how they look at an earnings report. I'm not going to go too much in the depths of the earnings report, uh, but some things that I can point out is that we did get a positive break on relative strength. If it traded at 60 flat, I would have been a buyer at 60 flat. If it trades there tomorrow or even early in the week next week, I will be a buyer at that 60 flat. I did buy at a higher price than 60 flat today, and the gap up from the earnings, it closed Wednesday's trading day at 58.88, and I will be buying that gap as well. Simply because I like the earnings report and I think the chart setup is justifiable. We will go into that here. Now I also say that above 62 could break out. 65.50 gap is a trim. So let's go take a look at this one and see what's going on with this. Now I did have a few different entries today. I tried to find an order, and one of the orders that I bought is actually at a higher price than what the current price is sitting at. We'll go talk about the trade. So here we have the open price, but first let's talk about why 62 is what I'm looking for a potential breakout price. You can see I look at this as a neckline break, and why do I call it a neckline break is because we have a confirmed higher low coming in right here. Here is an uptrend that I had marked earlier in the day. Obviously, I've cleared my chart a few different times, but I would say this is an uptrend, and then you have this short-term higher low coming in into the earnings report. And honestly, if I was talking about a neckline break, I would say the break of this 60 is also a neckline break. If this is your left leg, it builds a neckline, you set a high or low, this is a neckline break. Well, obviously, I don't get the opportunity to buy that neckline break, but if you look at it from this point of view, where this is a left leg, it builds a neckline, we set a high or low, then this is your neckline break, and this is at 62 flat. So this is why I like the 62 flat. Now in the pre-market, I could pull up the pre-market, but it was not trading above the 62 in the pre-market. Now look at where we open, where this price opens at. We open this at 62.18 and we set a low on the day at 62.05. Now if I was ready, this happened all very quickly. We'll go to a 1 minute chart just to show you guys how quick this actually happened. You can see we open up and it's just straight green and golf into the upside. So in my eyes, right off the open, I said I missed the entry. If I was trading in the pre-market, I would have had an entry below the 62 as it was trading below that 62. But then let's see where we run up to. We don't quite get up to that 65.50 where I said is a trend, but the high of the day is 65.34. Now, if we go back over to the daily chart, this should be marked into my chart, but like I said, I've canceled out my chart a few times. If we just run this over, this is the gap down that I'm referring to, where this gap, well, let's get it right there. Now, if I also hover over this, you can see the close. The gap is actually at 65.48. So I round that up a little bit and say 65, 50, but I can also see that we have another gap up here. These are all going to be target outs for the entry. And if we are very bullish, this is a flat top gap up here at 70. So taking in the entries, let's say you got the perfect 62 break of this neckline, 5%, 8%, and 13.5% are target outs that I'm looking for with this trade. So let's go talk about the entries that I had. Now I also do have another sticky note referring to this trade. CTSH volume increasing as it retraced towards that 62, which is where I liked it for the breakout. So I simply said find an entry. So we're going to talk about some of the entries that we had. Here's the retrace back down to 62. Now, I did not buy any part of this green candle. Boy, I wish I did, because I would have loved to take a price down here lower than what I did. But if we go over to a 5 minute chart, we can find the entries that we took. Now at the time, I simply just marked this top wick, and I simply marked the top wick of the following candle right here and said, if we get a price down in here, I'm going to pull the trigger on it. So my first entry was a 62.75, and I did get filled on it as it was retracing back up here for another entry in the 62.70s. Those are my first two entries. Now also at the time, if we go over to the 15 minute chart, I was marking an uptrend right here. And this is where we also took another retracement fill in the right around that 63. And we did get some follow through originally. Now, why do I have my channel set like this? If you go, I just simply just go to a higher time frame. Now you can see we've traded inside this range and we are wicking down to the bottom of this, so it's kind of respecting this upward channel. And also if you go to an hour chart, you can see nice green moves. Now what I was focused with these red candles to the downside is that you are getting decreased volume. So if this is a bull flag, I'm looking at the next three candles and how is it going to act, and I want to see it start showing me that curl, that U shape to the upside for further continuation to the upside. All in all, looking at the daily chart, I am going to be holding this into the close regardless if it goes below my entries or not, as long as it doesn't just go completely underneath that 62. I do not want it to start trading below this, because then I would say, okay, we're looking for a potential retrace down to 60 flat, potentially even the gap up at 58.88. So that is my look on the CTSH. Moving along, MRO. I thought there were solid earnings. It's still weak in strength. I like this name in the low 20s. I like it. I love it below 20. Oil is weak. I said less. It's supposed to say let it settle. So let this name settle a little bit. But I did like the earnings report. We can go take a look at MRO. So let's go take a look at MRO, Marathon Oil. Uh, Nice wick on this name. Like I said, it's still relatively weak, so just let this name settle a little bit. Now, I'll be honest with you guys, I am holding this name long. I pretty much respected this. It was a downtrend. I did not get shares bought of this. This is just how I have my chart set up now. But I also did buy this gap as it was giving you that positive break, and I wanted to buy that gap. So I have shares bought at a higher price, and I did not buy any shares of this today either. Why? Because I want this. I mean, it's relatively weak name. If I can get this at a lower price, I'm all for it. I'm all for it. And more in particularly, I would say that this is pretty solid support in here at these low 20s. This is why I like this name here. Am I going to buy it? You know, right here I would say people are looking to short this name for another low. So you got to be careful buying support sometimes. But under 20, I really like this name. You know, this support underneath 20 meets to a previous high. And I would also have this marked as when it breaks it, it retraces it. So 1750. If I can get this name for 1750, I'm all for it. I am going to be long MRO. Uh, as I said, I've stated at the beginning of the live stream, this is not investing advice, guys. I'm just a guy. I'm just a guy. I'm not an expert. I spend a lot of time with the market, yes, but I will say I do have personal biases. And, you know, oil could be a personal bias. And looking at this, this is an oil name, so we should go talk about oil's chart. Now, I also say oil is weak. Oil is weak. Relative strength of negative 51. It is leaving a nice wick on the day down into this previous low. But flipping this over to a monthly chart, you're in at this interesting level of support, and it's wicked into it a few times right here. So how is it going to act? Is it going to be able to hold this as support? If not, who knows? Maybe oil retraces back down. This is could have been looked at as a neckline. You know, you set a higher low, you break that. It hasn't retested that area, and this is at 40 and a half. Who knows? Maybe oil can retrace all the ways down to that level. I really don't know. But I like the oil name, and I thought the earnings were good, so I'll leave it at that. Uh, Yeah, so moving right along, let's go look at the next sticky note that we have. I said DAL, watch for an open price above 34, under 33.50. Be careful, trend line around 33. You have a gap fill at 31.59. So let's go take a look at DAL. As it did open up below that 54. So let's go flip it over to the 15-minute chart and look at what this has done from the open of the day. So it closes above 34, and what do? We open below 34, straight red engulfing through the level. Now, honestly, I said 33.50. Sometimes in the pre-market it's tough. Uh, but in more particular, you could have just gave it that quarter to the downside where 33.75. You put red engulfing right through that right at the open. And what do we retrace down to? I said trend line sitting around 33. We're sitting right around 33. So looking at this, is this a perfectly set trend line? You know, it's tough to say. There's probably a little wiggle room right there. Uh, but you have a wick down to it before. You set sort of a bottom short term at it this time, and now we're wicking into this level again. Can this start curling up and set a confirmed higher low? That is what I'm going to be looking for. If the price gets underneath this 33, uh, and more particularly 32.62, probably the wick low of today, you know, I got a decent idea that we're probably going to be retracing back down to this 31.58 gap. How it acts right there, you know, it's tough to say. And more in particular with this uptrend, you know, you probably could have it set more so like this. So the trend line at the time, I wasn't expecting a full red engulfing straight down to this trend line. But I'd say your trend line's meeting in right around here somewhere. So probably a name to just keep on watch. It's not, I wouldn't say buy this uptrend as, you know, it was getting close to that relative strength for a potential breakout of the relative strength, but you're still sitting at negative 63. Who's to say that we don't get back in these oversold areas? Who knows? Maybe you can pick this name up at this support. It has pretty decent support that's set in these middle 28s. You know, that could be your downside risk for this name, so keep that in mind. Next one, Enphase. In quotes, quotations, worth watching. Still relatively weak as a beautiful ascending channel. Will it pan out though? Question mark. I don't know if it's going to pan out. Obviously, I don't know short-term trading. It's just a big voting machine. But if more people buy and sell at a particular price, the price is going to go up. I do know that for certain. Downside, 141 gap. How's it going to act at the gap fill if it gets down there? So let's go take a look at end phase. Now, let me just zoom out real quick. This is the ascending channel I'm talking about right here. Uh, Pretty parallel ascending channel with, price action down here in the 90s up to 200. Price action low hundreds up to 270. Price action down here low hundreds. Price action up here at 325. And now we're back here again in the 150s, and it's kind of respecting this upward channel for the most part right now. But also what I state on the sticky note is that it's relatively weak. This name is relatively weak. Just from their earnings, we got a gap down from 220s, and it completely gaps down below this 180 support that you wanted to see hold as support. And now it's kind of just been a descending knife down to this trend line. So it's trying to hold this uptrend. Now, did I have my upward channel set like this before? No. I just seen yesterday was the first green candle it's put in. So I simply adjusted my uptrend to this. Maybe this uptrend or channel is set incorrectly. Who knows? But here's the 141 gap that I'm going to be interested in. And I would say down here in these low hundreds, each time it's gotten bought up really good off those low hundreds. So this is why it's worth watching in my opinion. If this uptrend can hold, I want to see this relative strength get back up to that positive area where I would be interested in this name. So that was the end phase. So that was the first one. The next one we post, FXI. This is a large cap China ETF. 2% gap up. Find a China name if you're looking for strength on the day. So let's go take a look at FXI real quick. iShares China Large Cap ETF. Now you can see it's still holding this nice gap up. We're up 2.5% on the day. Relative strength -28, so getting really close to that positive break. But this 28.50 is a neckline break. If this price is able to show me price action above that, I'm going to be very interested in some of these names. Now, if you were looking for a large cap China name, I would say the first one I'd keep an eye on is probably Tencent. It trades on the OTC, but you have a nice double bottom setting up right here. If this wants to start curling up, I'd say you have a neckline break right around this 44.50. If you get downside and you wanted to play aggressive, you have a gap that it wasn't able to fill down here at 42.40. And even further downside, you have this gap here at 41. Clear descending channel right here. How is it going to act if it does trade down to the bottom of this channel? I don't know. But if they are going to start catching a bid and it wants to respect these lows right here, it's going to have to get over this neckline for it to be a viable trade, in my opinion. Another name that you could take a look at is Alibaba, as a lot of these are going to have the same type of chart setup. A little bit weaker of a name. You have earnings coming up, but right in here at these lows. Another thing that is notable with Alibaba is, if you were to post this move, the 702 I think is a deadly retracement to the upside. Same can be said to the downside, as it respects the 702. Now are we going to respect this 702 again? I don't know. You got a couple gaps to the upside. For a move in this name to mean anything, it's got to show me that it can fill this $87 gap. If it can do that, maybe there's a trade worth taking right there. There is other large cap China names that you can look at, of course. But those are a couple that are on my watch list. Next one, we have ABEV. I thought ABEV put out great earnings. 288 is what it closed at yesterday, the gap up. That did get filled for me today. I did buy that order today. And 280 gap, I will be buying. Over 3 could break out, is what I state. So let's go take a look at ABEV. You can see we're trading at 289. Now you can see there's your gap up from 288. We gap up, we retrace down, we fill the gap. Relatively strong name, 92 in relative strength. I do have a channel drawn out. Now, for all I know, this is just how my chart is set up. I thought you had a clear downtrend, that it's when it broke over, it retested the top of it, and it's respected this uptrend for the most part. To the downside, we had a couple gaps. My entry is a lot better. This was an average up for me, and you know, I averaged up in it because I like the earnings report. I want you guys to be able to do your own due diligence, so maybe you should go look at the earnings report and see what you think of it yourself. Uh, but I like this, the earnings that I read, and I thought it was justifiable to average up on the position as it is a relatively strong name. And I think that that three break is possible. That's just saying that we're going to set another high. Uh, Low, higher low, higher low, higher low. It didn't really get down to that previous high, but here's the 280 gap that I also will be buying, as I think that if it were to have gotten down there today, it's trading inside of this channel. If it gets there later in the week, or if it, let's say we get a move to the upside and then we trade down here and later in May, maybe you're not on this uptrend anymore. Maybe it's not worth taking a trade at that 280 anymore. I don't know. That's still a ways away. Um, but I thought the earnings were really good. I'm just going to leave it at that and we'll move right along. So that was this note. Stay away sticky note. SQ. Until it's over 62, this is a short. Earnings are after hours today. So let's go take a look at SQ. Now you can see the wick high on the day goes to a high of 61.38. So in my eyes, this is just wicking into resistance. Why does it have to get over 62? That's just above these wick highs. But then you also have this downtrend right here. So you can see this is a downtrend that it's been respecting. It's also respecting the uptrend as well. So that is worthy of noting, in my opinion, because the earnings are today. It's still trading on a potential uptrend right here. Uh, but then even if you get over top of that 62, I still think that this name probably looks like a short if it gets into those upper 60s, as all it did over here was reject the previous low. Can it show strength to get over 70? I, it's just tough. And there's a lot of share dilution with this, so that is going to be one of the main things that I'm looking at with this name is, okay, they have earnings today. Are they continuing to dilute shares? Me, as somebody that is looking to go long in a name, I'm not interested in getting diluted as a shareholder. That's just my personal opinion. Some people are okay with it. Some people look at it as the company needs the capital to be able to grow, and it's good for long term. Me, I'm not looking to get diluted as a shareholder. That's just me. So that was the Square sticky note. Till it gets over 62 and you had earnings today, I think it's just a name that you stay away from. That's my opinion, of course. So moving along, the SQQQ NASDAQ short looks better by the day. If you have the entry, hold it. But I'm also insinuating that the relative strength on this is still negative 54. Uh, so the second sticky note in this is, if you don't have NASDAQ, or if you don't have it, NASDAQ is still strong. Don't panic. That is what I state. So let's go take a look at the SQQ. SQQQ. NASDAQ short. Now, the same way at the beginning of this, how I have talked about the NASDAQ, you can see the relative strength. At the time of the video, this was a full green engulfing candle breaking through the top end of this channel, and relative strength was negative 54. Now we're sitting at negative 57, so it is catching a little bit of resistance. If we go take a look at this, actually I had this descending channel and it wasn't even able to get down to the bottom end of this channel, kind of breaking out over that. So I might need to adjust a couple things right here. I'm just going to take this out. Now, the same way on the NASDAQ, how I had a descending channel, I have the ascending channel on the NASDAQ short. and you can see it's still respecting the top end of this channel, and we're currently wicking into it right now. So would I go out and advise somebody on a relatively weak name, to go and buy this name right into the top end of the channel? No, no. Now, if the Nasdaq catches a little bit of a bid, and we're talking about it, a price down here around 29.50, okay, maybe it's reasonable to maybe dip your toes. Maybe you use it as a hedge for the rest of your portfolio. I don't know how you look at it. Uh, but for me, I got an entry that I feel comfortable with. I had a couple entries over here, and I had a couple entries over here, and I have not trimmed it because, in my eyes, I look at this as an early entry. I have personal views that the market is overvalued. I can pull up, if I had more time, if I had you sitting next to me, I could pull up data that could support that reasoning. In my eyes, I think it supports that reasoning. But I think that there's clear outs also, uh, for this Nasdaq short, as you have gaps up here in these 32s, you have a gap in middle 33s, and I think it's even possible for this to run up to that 40 flat range where it can fill this gap. So if I'm already telling myself that, from the current price, I think it's potential that we can get a 31% move to the upside. I'm all for it. Sign me up. Especially when I'm looking at it as a hedge for the rest of my positions. Yeah, sign me up. I'm all for it. But also a lot of green volume coming into this, over the last 3 days. Is that going to have any follow through? I don't know. So that was the sticky note posted for the NASDAQ short. CTSH increasing volume as it retraced down towards 62. We kind of already talked about that, but I will go reiterate this and talk about it again. It's holding right around where my last entry was. So I'm okay with this. I'm probably going to be holding this name into the close as it is respecting this channel that I have drawn out. And the reason why we had that channel drawn out, switch over to the 30-minute. I'm just connecting the bottoms, connecting the tops, and it's respecting it as of right now. Is it going to respect it going forward? I don't know. But I'm holding this name into the close based off the earnings report that I read this morning. And I think the chart setup is justifiable of itself as well. So if we switch over to a 1-minute chart, we're going to talk about how it retraced back down here. Now it gets to a wick low here of 62.11. Now I state on the sticky note, increasing volume as it's retracing towards that 62, and it doesn't even get down to 62. Now this is what I was looking at. You see how it's just light volume, light volume, light volume, light volume, light volume. Now this red engulfing candle as it takes out the low, this could be people looking to get short. It could be people punching long too. I don't know. But you have 3 consecutive candles right here where we get that increased volume, and then it shows a little bit of follow through. And then it shows that it can take out the next high. Now I don't use a 1-minute chart, but if we go compare this to a 15-minute chart right here, this is what that move looked like off of that. You see the wick as it gets closer to that 62. That is buying pressure in my eyes, and it follows it up with this green candle. We talked about the entries off of those highs. I can talk about that again if you guys missed it. All I did, I simply marked the wick tops and the wick tops, and we retrace right down into that level, and the buyers come in. I mean, it in a sense, are more people gonna buy or sell at a particular price? That's what I'm looking for. So that's why I took the trade right there, and that's why I'm holding it into the close as well as it's continuing to respect this channel right here. And even on this last candle right here, as we're getting really close into my original entry, you see this volume's already picking up right here. So I like this name into the close, and that's why I'm holding it. So moving right along. Disney closes below the 200-day. Now, I wasn't even looking at Disney. I wasn't even looking at Disney. I think part of the reason some of these streaming names were down was, Paramount reported, and I think they missed earnings. All right, it was down big. So it got the catalyst to the downside based off of the Paramount earnings. Okay. But I state closes underneath the 200-day yesterday, and then it gets the gap down continuation. I'm long Disney, I'm holding it. Downside risk, I just mark all these gaps. So let's go take a look at Disney. So I mean, I could have you get this nice red engulfing channel. It starts trading inside the original channel to the upside or to the downside. It's trading in this channel. It breaks it out. It respects the top end of it. Now you gap back down inside of it. So to me, it's like if I'm already long this name, why would I be interested in selling it at that range? Now, looking at the daily candle of it, I know I have a huge mess on on this chart. You know, I could just clear this chart up, but this is how I have my chart, and it makes sense to me. That's what matters. Uh, but you have one, two nice points of contact. You're kind of wicking into it for this third point of contact. In my eyes, if I was to sell this name, you know, it is getting relative strength. You know, if I was looking to sell this name, I would look to sell it as it retraced back into the upper 90s, right in this range. But I still think it's holding this uptrend, and we have the earnings. I'm holding this name into the earnings. Unless it shows me that it wants to get below this uptrend before the earnings, I'm holding it into the earnings. That's what I'm doing. But here's the gaps. You have a couple gaps right here. Here's your further downside risk. You have a gap fill right in here. You have a gap fill right here, and you have a gap down here. You even have further downside risk as here's your support, but if you break below that, you know, you have you have gaps, I'm sure, and over at this range as well. Just because I'm saying that it's got downside risk here doesn't mean that it doesn't have further downside risk. As you can see, I have a descending channel marked right here that it has not been able to trade over. So that was the Disney. And the last one that I posted for today is Apple is worth talking about on the live stream. Earnings are after hours. So yes, Apple does report after hours. Let's go take a look at Apple. So we talked about Apple a few days ago, and I said that you have this 7150 gap. Now look at as we got close to it. You see this candle that I put in yesterday, and yes, yesterday was a Fed meeting day, and the Nasdaq short came in. I also think that, you know, I've seen this setup type before as here's your descending channel. You know, if I was to just clear out everything, let's just clear out everything real quick. Let's connect the tops. We're going to go ahead and connect these tops, and you can see this was respected before. Now in my eyes, you know, this has acted as clear resistance multiple times already. Now if we connect the lows, you see how we have this sideways capitulation channel. Boom. Who's to say that Apple doesn't trade back down here to these 120s again? I do not know. Another thing that I do see on this is off of the commodity, you kind of have a head and shoulders type of look right here. It is relatively strong, but you're putting in lower high, lower high, lower high, lower low, lower low. Gonna be another lower low. It is putting in a green candle on the day going into earnings. It didn't have the weakness to get down to this gap fill at 163 and change, but would I be confident holding this name into the earnings? You know, you could get the gap up in continuation. It very well could. But in my eyes, I think that up here, I don't think it's worth buying if you don't have it. If you have the entry down here and you've trimmed it on the way up, by all means, more power to you. But in my eyes, I don't think it's justifiable of holding it. Uh, and I would most definitely, if you got the entry down here, I would have that order set up at 71.50 as over here. Here's your gap down. Let's just mark this gap. Now you can go look at my Apple trading videos from way back when the price, when we're talking about over here in July. I was preaching this gap. And look at the follow through that this has. Now that does not mean that I'm going to be right again. It really doesn't mean. All I'm saying to myself is that I think that this needs to be respected. That's all I'm saying. Will the price trade long term? Long term with Apple. Apple is a fundamentally sound company. They invest their capital very well on top of that. Those types of names I want to hold. If Apple were to be trading down here, I'd probably be preaching to buy it. Uh, But another thing that I preach is it is possible that Apple trades down here at this $96 gap. Call me crazy, but it is possible. So that was the sticky notes for the day, and I thought Apple was worth talking about. So I threw that in for the sticky note. And that kind of completes the recap for the day. I should go back over here. It doesn't look like we have anybody. We do have two people watching. If you guys got anything you want me to look at before I close out the stream for the day, it's been a long day. I've been up since 3:30 preparing. That's kind of the sleeping schedule I've been on lately. But I don't mind sticking around for a little bit if you guys got anything in particular you want me to look at. By all means, type something in the chat. I'll give you guys a little bit of time to do so. Just gonna go over here and take another look at this CTSH, as I am going to be holding this into the close if you guys missed that. Uh, Man, those earnings, I really like those earnings, man. And getting pretty good action off of this. I wasn't sure when I had this channel if it was set correctly, but now that I'm looking at it right here, I really like respecting this channel. And if it opens inside of this channel tomorrow, I'd probably buy more on top of what I bought today. So yeah, that's CTSH for you. I'll sit here and just watch this. Give you guys a little bit more time to request anything. I'll look at any tickers and I'll give you my unbiased opinion. I don't care how crappy I think the company is. I'll go strictly off technicals and I'll mark the chart out how I would mark it. Give you guys a couple minutes to request anything. If you guys are watching, I see two people are in here watching. If you guys got anything you want me to look at, I'll gladly share my opinion on it. You guys don't have to be shy. Nike, okay, I'll take a look at Nike. Uh, Kind of a funny story. Before a lot of the bloodiness came into the stock market, I was really big on a short for Nike. So first thing I'll say, flip it over to the daily chart. First thing I'll say is you're relatively strong, uh, wicking into the previous high. So all I would say right here is when you get this positive break. Now, you do get positive breaks over here, right? But you see they quickly get rejected off that level. So here's your positive break. You have a gap. You know, if you were really strong in this name, you could have bought the gap, but now you're negative. You get a positive break right here. Now, all the ways through this, you're getting higher lows. So this is a trend line that I would definitely have marked. When this trend line goes sideways, I would more than likely be expecting this to retrace down to this 103 gap. You know, and if it really is bearish, you know, you have another gnarly gap, this would be a buying window where I'd say, you know, it's probably a lot more fairly priced in this range. But also on top of this trend line, you have an ascending channel built right there. So I know some people aren't big on trend lines, but I'd say this trend line has been respected, and your positive strength is still positive 49. So looking over to the day, now you could say this is now if you got the entry on the positive break, respect the trims. Now here's a flat top gap. Let's just mark this trim. You get the fill. Almost direct correlation on this fill. Now, if this wants to break out, you see this is the flat top. Now, if you were trading this over here and you had a trend line set, this is a flat top gap. If it can break that and hold, you can see it breaks it and tries to hold, but then we eventually gap down below this trend line. You have a retracement near the 702 and you get follow through. You have a nice 5-wave structure right here. So in my eyes, this is a 5-wave structure meeting up. Now eventually you do end up breaking this downtrend. Now where does the uptrend start? You broke the downtrend, you retrace, the uptrend starts. You set a higher low. Now you get a confirmed positive break on your relative strength, and you're trying to hold that level. You're wicking into it right now. So flipping over to a 15-minute chart. If this wants to have continuation, obviously this is the level you want to see hold. It's a little bit bearish on the day, but you are getting a nice slope up. You are trying to hold higher lows. If this can break back up on top of 124.50, I would say you're going to have traders that are looking to scalp this up to this gap fill. Now, if you're in the trade already and you got the entry you like, and this does transpire, I would more than likely trim this 126.73 gap, but hold for the dream. I always like holding the piece for the dream. Uh, and the dream price, if it can get back over top of these highs, here's some resistance I would probably respect. And this is probably a trimming window right around this gap. So 135 to 138. Now, if I can go back and remember when this was really looking bearish, I believe it was right in here. The 50-day was sitting right over here. So maybe if you want to do this on your own time, uh, April 5th, 2022. This is where it was really getting bloody. You had this head and shoulders trying to transpire. Now you do end up trading above that, but you give out that price and it just had continuation to the downside. You had a downtrend that was meeting in with that. That was one of the shorts I was talking about, and I got a lot of pushback when I was talking about it. But, you know, Nike, one thing I'll say about Nike as well is Nike has a competitive advantage as they have a very large moat. Those types of companies will trade at a premium. People are going to be willing to buy those names at a higher price than what I would value them at, simply because they have those competitive advantages. Uh, all in all, if you got an entry on this name, your relative strength is good. You're far away from the earnings report. You know, the company does pay a dividend. It's not the most, but I'm sure their payout ratio is decent. I don't know Nike like that off the top of my head. If this does go south, I would not get caught bag holding this underneath 115, as you're going to have a lot of people looking to go short on this name down to 103. That's an unbiased opinion right there. I'm not a fan of the valuation for Nike, but I will say that uh, relative strength wise, this is how I look at relative strength. Just like in gambling, the house is going to have an advantage. The house holds an advantage over top of the players. If the relative strength is weak, I think that the house is in favor of the shorts. If the relative strength is strong, I think that the house is in favor of the longs. That's how I play relative strength. This is why these middle areas, this line right here, right at zero, this in my opinion is where the big players are at, because you got a lot of people looking to punch long and you got a lot of people looking to punch short. Uh, so you're going to have a lot more volatility around this range. This coming into an earnings day, you see the volume picking up around this middle ground. This at the positive strength, you know, it is a little bit elevated, but then you also see your positive break right here. You get a little bit more pop in that volume. This is where the big players are at, in my opinion. So I hope that was helpful to you. Um, just like that, just marked out a bunch of levels. I know it's a little bit sloppy on the chart, but if you wanted to run a deep stop on this, I would say respect this uptrend, which it could be wicking into it today. It's tough to say. Now, if you also wanted another aspect of things, which way do you see the market going? So we go look at the NQ. Uh, let's just get rid of these two lines right here. Same thing. The NQ looks relatively strong. You have a nice move. You're getting three candles to the downside. You have a descending channel. If the NQ can take out the top end of this channel, I would say you're good holding longs because the leg up for the NQ, you're going to go try and test this next high. Another leg up, you're looking to go test 13.7 in my opinion. So I hope that answers your questions. If you got any other tickers you want me to look at briefly, I'll give you a couple of minutes to request anything else. More than likely, everything I just said probably went over your head. I know it's a crazy game, man. It's a crazy game. I see we still have one person watching. I don't know if that's you, but I do appreciate you requesting the ticker. Yeah, hey, yeah, that was. I appreciate you responding in the chat. Normally, the last couple live streams I've had, I haven't even had anybody watching. So, I hope that was hopeful to you. And if you got anything else you want me to look at, now's the time to ask. As it's been a pretty long day for me. So, yeah, overall, yeah, if I go back over to the Nike, I believe that's a ticker for it. Yeah. I mean, it's got a nice uptrend right here. Honestly, it doesn't really look bad. If you had the level that you want to see it close above, if somebody has really had a nice positive break trade right here, and more in particular where I think a lot of people punch long, this was kind of the deciding day. When you get that gap up, on days when you just got the positive strength, right? You get the gap up the following day, and I'll go to a 15-minute chart and look at this, but you see how we leave a wick into that gap up. This is realistically where I'd like to take the trade. You get the positive strength right here. Okay, the golden entry would have been probably off of this green candle top right here. So if it pulled back into like right 22.50, go figure that this meets in right around a whole 50-cent mark, right? Now let's go over to a 15-minute chart and we'll go back and look at this day. So here's where you get that positive strength day. So here's your gap up. You gap up. You see how we retrace and we set on a 15-minute chart, nice double bottom, and there's your follow through. You get that first green candle, and you see how the following candle right here is a nice green candle. Now later in this day, we trade right back to the same level. Look at the volume increase. This is no, I do not teach anything. I don't have any courses. Uh, I'm just a guy. I'm very busy. I work just crazy hours. In my opinion, I think they're crazy hours. I have, 5 different jobs. I've had people ask me if I teach a course or not. And I don't, simply because, this is my personal opinion. I have nothing against people that make courses, but some people that have courses, it's just a money grab, in my opinion. Now, more power to them. If you can get people to buy the course, I mean, more power to them. Me, I like doing it for free. I'm still young. I think I'm ahead of the curve, in my opinion. Uh, but I think the skills that I've built over the last couple of years there's no need for me to do a course and charge people money for it, which is why I'm trying to get into teaching people in general. Um, but more off of what I was saying about the Nike, just this was the day. So with this being that gap fill, this is really an interesting level right here that you'd want to see hold. Now going back over to the daily on this, maybe I should get rid of the watch list right here. Go figure that this is the trading day that we're wicking into. So anybody who took that trade on this day, if they took profits and they're looking to reload it, they're doing is simply reloading this level. So this is a level that you'd really want to see hold on this. Now I'd want to see this start forming a nice U shape, and hopefully if it does that, it can eventually take out this top right over here at 128. If it can do that, I think it could potentially even take out this wick high at 131.50. And you can get that further move where I would say this is the sell window, where I would definitely be looking to take profit. And if you take profits up in this range and you're looking to reload it, I would respect this uptrend. Reload it into the uptrend, and maybe if you're lucky, you can get the next window to the upside, which is 142 gap. The dream move, and this is a gnarly gap to the downside. The NQ is going to be bullish as hell if you get this move up to the upside. And for it to make that move, more than likely you're going to need an earnings date to come in with that. But uh, yeah, this is a pretty interesting setup with Nike. If I was setting this uptrend, could be worth noting. So if it does get weak, maybe that uptrend meets in with this support down here. I don't know. But yeah, appreciate the responses in the chat, and I hope that was helpful. I know it's probably really confusing, and I went through it probably faster than I should have. Uh, but one of my main things that I'm looking for, so this, if I just zoom out a little bit, you see how this is just a nice, beautiful run? You know, I could talk about this low. I didn't even need to look down to see that I was in September. I just knew. You know, maybe that's I can make a video and post that explaining why I think that is. I'm not that would be a much longer conversation. But one of the main things I'm looking for, so this is a nice run, and you see how it's already forming this U shape. Goes on a run, builds a U shape. I could freaking go trademark that, if I'm being honest. This is one of the more typical setups that I would like to trade is taking a positive break on this U shape. So if you got an entry in around this range, I think it's worth holding. Uh, but yeah, we are coming into the close on the day. I am gonna end the stream there. You know, I'm gonna be live streaming at 2 o'clock every single day, 2 o'clock my time, which is Central Time. So if you want to tune in again sometimes, I also have been posting a lot on my Twitter, and all I've been doing is posting my notes. I make these notes pre-market and also a few during the day. But I've been doing this for pretty much this whole week. I also throw in a few sports bets. Like I said, I'm not a sports betting expert. And I have not been doing very good on my sports bets. But I have a different type of sports betting strategy that I go about. And that, you know, who knows? Maybe it's not the greatest sports betting strategy. Uh, so yeah, hopefully I can see you in the chat again, and I am going to call this on the stream. I appreciate you for tuning in, man. You have a good rest of your day.